So Stephen and I will be presenting the Futurist Playground, a brief introduction into who we are, the methodologies we use, our goals, missions, and what we're interested in doing at Arcosanti. So I'll give you a brief rundown of our agenda for the presentation. We'll start the first part by kind of telling the Futurist Playground story, which starts with our background, personal backgrounds and motivations for why we're working on this project. Followed by the fulfillment methodology that we've started developing based on our observations and motivations. And then a little bit about the global community network that we're interested in creating based on this methodology. And then finally, more about the organization work and the specific goals of the Futurist Playground entity and how other people can get involved. The second part is specifically the proposal for Arcosanti, which is going into what a sustainable transient volunteer program might look like, what we're calling the network participant system. And finally, part three is an invitation for other people to collaborate with us, either for this specific project or with Futurist Playground as a whole. So I'll start with my personal background. I've always been interested in how technology can be used to improve people's lives and also the planet. And I started my career in the tech industry working with software development. And I quickly began to be disenfranchised with how technology is currently often used to exploit people and the planet. So I kind of shifted my focus and interest first in political activism, because I thought I could try to change some of the issues that I saw. And I also got disenfranchised with that because I realized that some of the inherent problems with the system are what's preventing or slowing progress. So then I met up with Stephen, who will present a little bit about himself, and we started developing what it might look like to go beyond some of these fundamental problems where you can actually use technology to improve the world, and how it doesn't have to be something that exploits people or the environment.
Thanks, Andrew. So, Stephen, you guys have probably heard some of my intro before, but I'll be quick. I got a degree in automation engineering, which is essentially mechanical engineering. My job was to automate people's jobs, and realized that we were very good at this, and that in the near future, we would automate most work, or at least be able to. And the incentive structure is in place to automate most work. Where I became concerned with this reality was that our socioeconomic system is not compatible with massive unemployment, which is what we're heading towards. The other concern I had was climate change and how that was going to impact our lifestyles, and how as we get more extreme environments, the current situation is we put out more energy, which actually accelerates this change. So I also began studying incentive structures, trying to figure out how we can make a better incentive structure for living and what that might be like. And I started getting introduced to different futurists, and I became a futurist myself. I worked with Jacques Fresco, the Venus Project. I've studied Buckminster Fuller, a lot of other futurists out there that have a very interesting technique for understanding the future. Now, I'm not talking about the futurists that you might be familiar with in Italy, but rather people who look at exponential changes to identify trends for what our future might be like. And there's a lot of exponential trends that are happening in the world, and we'll go over some of those and why they're very relevant to Arcosanti and all of our future. So currently we have a very unsustainable socioeconomic system. Basically, our goal is to increase GDP. But as we do that, we increase our CO2, we increase the surface temperature of the planet, we increase extinction of species and the loss of tropical rainforests and wetlands. So our incentive structure is to destroy the planet right now. Not so great. The other issue, technical unemployment. This is a very conservative estimate. Over the next about 20 years, we'll reach 50% of automation. More realistic estimates are actually upwards of 80%. We can already automate over half of the jobs that people currently have, and the cost of doing this is very affordable. It's so affordable, Arcosanti could automate a lot of work, and it would cost less than minimum wage to do so. So how does decisions look today? We often look at it in terms of profit. What's profitable, we do. What's not profitable, we cut. Well, what does that really look like? Clear cutting our forests, prostitution, but eliminating healthy food, eliminating education, eliminating healthcare. This is how our government operates. It's not a sustainable future. So, Ken Wilber introduces this idea of holons, and he's also a futurist in a sense. And we're looking at the trends that are happening with society. This is kind of where we're coming from and where we're going. So we came from like survival clans, ethnic tribes, feudal empires, to now corporate states. But there is this paradigm shift in values that are occurring. We are seeing an exponential increase in communities and cooperatives that are happening around the world, and they are adopting new values, world-centric values. So these are called value communities, and this will lead to eventually a network or mutual commons and a holistic meshwork. So before I get into values, I want to kind of explain how our value systems work. From the internal perspective, our values are seen as a good thing. We're doing things for the benefit of our group, our family, ourselves. But from the external, it can be seen as exploitation. For example, the U.S. does a lot to increase the wealth of our nation. Consequently, we exploit all of our neighboring countries and the planet. So, depending on your perspective, our values are good or evil. So, this is the external paradigm shift in values that we've been observing. And any of you who took the survey we had when we first came here might be familiar with some of these terms. Andrew also passed out what these values are with definitions, so I'm not going to go into that. But what's cool with this is we notice basically a whole lot of shift that's happening. And first we start with the kind of the internal, the ego, the perspective, the self-preservation, yourself. But then for a while we're focused at the ethnocentric level of the values, which is focusing on your community, your family, or your nation, where you care about these things. But with the internet, we have realized that humans are family all over the world, and that we are one planet, and we are moving towards a world-centric value system. So we're moving essentially from values of greed and property towards systems of access, from exploiting the environment to trying to regenerate the environment. 40 years ago, sustainability wasn't a word that was used very often, and now everybody talks about sustainability. And we're also having corporations adopting these values. Next slide. So this is kind of showing where the Arcosanti values, I believe, were created about 40 years ago. So what we have are Arcosanti values imprinted over this. And you can see actually that they are completely in line with what we're talking about. However, we have observed that there are a lot of other values that are part of world-centric thinking. So while your definition might be limited footprint, we have resourcefulness or efficiency and regeneration, sustainability. And resourcefulness goes with regeneration. Ecological accountability, that's again another form of regeneration as we define the value. Then experiential learning is discovery and exploration. So Rob did an excellent presentation on the idea of crowdfunding, but there's a lot of crowd things happening in the world, and one is also crowdsourcing information. Or one of the reasons why hierarchies have existed for so long is that it's really difficult to get everybody in the room together and to value everybody's opinion and to then be able to sort all that information. But with technology, we are becoming very good at sorting big data. And we can turn impossible for humans to understand information into things that are incredibly easy to understand. This is a way of evaluating decisions or options that we have. Arcosanti has been presented with hundreds of proposals over the years. And it's really difficult for anybody to compare all these solutions, keep them in their head. But using big data, we can make graphics like this that can rate these different solutions so we can see where it is on there and understand, well, maybe this is our best solution. Instead of it coming from a gut feeling or whatever. So if you were to look at this chart, understanding this key, you should be able to identify the best solutions or rate the best solutions to the most potentially damaging solution. The A, B, D, C. Likewise, if we were to actually use this as a filter for presenting information or understanding how much thought was put into an idea, you can tell where the most thought was put into place, where the most input is, and where the least. So if we're looking at decisions, we're like, you can compare this to your personal values. Like, I really care about like love and compassion, or maybe efficiency. You're like, this solution doesn't have enough thought put into that. So it tells you two things. The idea might need more development in a certain area, or it allows you to then also start contributing to it, because you can realize very quickly that this is where I have a lot to give, and actually get involved in this project, because these areas are looking pretty filled out. So it allows for the crowdsourcing of information to happen instead of relying again on just a few people. So we've created what's called fulfillment or integral methodology. It's a 3-step process for that a community can use, and this is basically how the communities that we're developing will operate. But this process can be modified to fit your own needs. So, for example, Arcosanti was using, they could just focus on their 4 values, or they could reevaluate their values and decide if they want to include more, maybe communal ones or ones that would encourage like health and vitality of the community. But either way, we have essentially 3 ways in which you contribute. And this is a very different way of contributing. Right now, here, we specialize. We focus on one job, one department, and that's it, even though we have skill sets that may vary. So this is actually encouraging to participate in all 3 categories. A facilitator is somebody who understands the value system very well. They're able to input data. Resource gatherer is essentially the person who creates the implementation strategy, or figures out where resources are going to come from, or how we can actually make the project happen. The designer is the person who deals with design challenges, puts together proposals, but all these things are happening continuously. It's a continuous cycle. And as we input information, we take into account the idea of restorative justice. This is a data-driven system, like science. It uses data. When we have limited amounts of data, sometimes the data is misinterpreted. So we might think something is very good for our health and realize after 40 years it's a carcinogen. So we always take into account what to do in case the data is wrong as we get more of it. And that's called restorative justice. It's how you restore a situation to a healthy state. Instead of punitive justice, which is our current system where you put people in jail, we don't actually take care of the root cause of the problems. And all this is input and organized based on the value system that we have identified as being present on Earth. This is not all values that possibly exist, but we have lots of synonyms to go into greater detail. And that chart gives a very light definition of what these values are. We actually have about 1,000 pages of documentation for how this process works, going into great detail about all of this. So more than 10 years of effort are put into this project. This is just a very light overview. But anyway, what comes out of this is a potential solution, or rather, it points out a lot of areas in which might not have been considered. So this is an excellent design tool for making sure that what we create is holistic and actually beneficial, and not just focus on one value such as profit. So going into a little more detail, with the internal and external perspectives of the value system. And I'm not going to go much into this, but when we look at the internal, we see these are all the things, like with our environment. Like, well, if we don't use the resources, somebody else will. We create a reward incentive. We pay people to do work within the community, because that's like a good thing. We have freedom via power and control. Like, we're talking about power being a good thing because we have the power to do what we want, that kind of thing. We collaborate within our group, but we're competing with other organizations. Trying to create abundance for our community or our nation. These are all the values that we've had for the past century. But when we look at them from the external perspective, we actually step out of being the one who's receiving, but rather the one who's being taken from. These can be quite awful. What's interesting is when we enter the holistic level, is that the values become the same. And what's also really interesting is that when you think world-centrically, whatever solutions you come up with are also good for the community and are also good for the individual. Well, it's not true in the opposite order. So thinking on a holistic level will give you solutions that are going to also be beneficial for the planet or other communities or whatever. And it doesn't make it a more complicated design process, but actually a simpler one. So this is kind of a graphic of how you can use data to show your participation. And there's a lot of ways to view data. But this is just showing kind of like a pie chart showing your contribution as a facilitator, designer, resource gatherer. So this person's pretty balanced. This is a spider chart, which also shows your comparison compared to the average. So you might not be contributing as much as the maximum people, but you're still pretty balanced. So again, the process of our facilitator is applying the value decision method, which is the chart I just showed you. Designers solve design challenges, and resource gatherers gather resources, tools, and develop an implementation strategy. But what's most important with this is it allows everybody to participate in any project, not just locally. This tool is intended to be a global tool. So we have a project that we're working on. Anybody can contribute to that project, inputting more information than we could possibly have within the community or within just a few individuals. And there are lots of different projects that exist that are taking advantage of crowdsourcing. And it gives you superior results from very little investment very quickly. I've already explained the restorative justice method, so essentially we're just preemptively thinking about the consequences. If something goes wrong, how are we going to correct it? So instead of like, oh, what do we do now? It's like, oh, we need to plan for that. All right. So I was talking about some pretty big problems earlier, such as climate change, massive unemployment. We've applied this tool to thinking holistic solutions on a global level. One of them is actually creating a global community network. We are actively working with a team of people, I'll get to that in a minute, to create essentially an integrated city system. Our interest in Arcosanti is to see if Arcosanti is interested in participating in part of an experiment. I want to point out that what we're requesting requires absolutely no change of anybody here or how the place is organized. Rather, it's something that can be additional, a way to bring in more people who can use this system to manage their life, which will create more volunteers here in a sustainable fashion, allowing more labor to help develop the project in a task-oriented fashion without it being a cost to Arcosanti. And there's a lot of different ways this can happen, and we have a lot of different proposals that would be great for a community to come in and actually apply this method to rating which proposals are best. We aren't going to give you the answer. It would require interest in collaboration from this group, because that's something that people are actually interested in. So what would a postmodern arcology look like? If we were to update Arcosanti to the values that we presented, it would actually kind of change the environment and a lot about changing our mindset. So we go from an environment of scarcity, which is consumption, and this isn't all necessarily just, by the way, attacking Arcosanti. This is a bigger vision for what modern society looks like. But in many ways, Arcosanti does operate as a lot of other organizations do. So I'm not trying to be rude. But we have a consumption, obsolescence, property, infinite growth, competition, labor for income. Again, I don't mean to think this is a negative thing for Arcosanti. But what it creates is an environment of abundance, or preservation, optimal design, access to steady state collaboration, mechanization, awareness, and abundance and equality. And there are areas for improvement here that we can definitely talk about other times. So a little bit about our organization, Futurist Playground, our work and our goals. So this is kind of being silly, but our goals, mission, vision, doctrine, and lifestyle is to support each other in progressing towards our highest potential, continuously improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the community, to continuously improve the means and methods by which we discover, understand, learn, communicate, and act, to exist in a state of regenerative abundance within our habitat, to arrive at decisions based upon a common living purpose, set of needs, values, and approach, to live in a state of appreciation and compassion, to continuously improve access, abundance, so that we may all more easily contribute to the community. This is our project timeline. So we've already completed our community specifications, unified and continuously being updated. It's an emergent solution. We do not have a utopian answer. It is something that as we continuously get more information, it will continue to evolve and allows more and more inputs. It is essentially a crowdsourced solution to community. We already have completed the specification outline and summary. we are at the stage of doing all of these simultaneously. Decision system programming, essentially automating the tools I was showing you. That's something that Andrew and I are working on right now. Simulation integrated city system. My initial project coming here was to develop this. Non-fiction book, movie, board game, online game. So that's what I worked on. Have a conference. We're going to be starting having conferences later this year. Screening and orientation specifications, basically how people can become part of the community or be organized. Community outreach and sign-in. Community interface business plan, geopolitical jurisdictional analysis, so finding out ideal sites for communities, site analysis, and then construction of the community and construction of the community network. Now this is our approach for creating fresh cities. But, if you go to the next slide. We are also looking at helping existing communities transition towards a sustainable or compatible future. Because these changes that are happening are going to greatly affect our economy. This Arcosanti is built on a luxury economy, the sale of bells. That's not a need that people have. If the economy does poorly, Arcosanti is going to be hit very hard. So these are people who we're accountable to, and why we work so much. We are part of the Futurist Playground, also the Arbonne Project, one community, Katama. We would like to be a part of Arcosanti in a more official way. And this is a global network of people who are all helping to develop sustainable communities, or even cities. I should mention about Katama is one I would really recommend looking at. That was actually funded by the British government, or the UK, to create a crowdsourcing platform for developing future cities. And Arcosanti, our one community is hugely popular. They have crowdsourced a huge volunteer program for developing a network of community solutions. And Arcosanti is the delineation of what community can really be with everything we know. It's the most in-depth resource that I have found anywhere on community. And I think Arcosanti is a place that has room for discussing community. That's something that I hear a lot of people talking about. We aren't a community. Whether or not we are, I disagree. I think this is a community, but a lot of people feel that it isn't. And what would it be like if it was? Do we have to be a complete arcology before we can be a community? I don't know. Those are questions that need to be discussed. So, questions. How to create a sustainable transient volunteer program at Arcosanti, aka the network participant system. What we have now, what sustainable means, and some solutions. So we have identified a variety of contribution roles: full-time, part-time, 20/20, spouse, extended stay, reduced working hours, with supplementations for income. So this weekend we shared a chart with everybody on Slack. This is basically an analysis of how money is being used at Arcosanti, what it costs, what it's actually expected of people of different situations. So we compare full-time to resident volunteer to 20/20 spouse volunteer, all these things to understand. If you were to go on spouse policy, like Andrew and I talked about, if you were also to try and be sustainable at Arcosanti, what would that mean? And what's really interesting is that it's not as simple as people think. People thought it would be an abuse of the policy, but if you use what's available here, you actually would find out that, for example, we would both have to contribute 30 hours a week to be sustainable at Arcosanti, not 40 and 2. If you're to be sustainable as a volunteer here, you have to work 45 hours a week, while paid employees work 40, and after all expenses, take home $10,000. While 20/20 people, same thing, only 40, get to take home $4,500. And then, so we also took the cost. So the cost of just being a spouse but staying on Arcosanti is, or plus the volunteer, ends up being more than $8,000. So this is one of the issues that Andrew and I are experiencing being here, is that it is very expensive for us to stay here as volunteers. It's not sustainable for us. And yet, Arcosanti needs more volunteers. We need more people here to help with the project. So we looked at this to understand how we create a sustainable volunteer system. Next slide. So we coined what we call the network participation system. It's a task management system for volunteers, housing management system for volunteers, a rating system for volunteers, a review of the community. So let me explain from the beginning. What we're proposing is connecting Arcosanti to a network. This network has transient volunteers, where once a year, I would come here for like the next 20 years. So I'll come and spend 3 or 6 months helping Arcosanti. When I leave, somebody else will replace me in a sustainable fashion, long term. We can supply all the volunteers that Arcosanti needs if it's in a sustainable fashion, where we understand what we're going into. So the task management system lets people know what they've been working on in advance. It's not whimsical, it's not like doing this, thinking you just take this long and have it keep changing. The housing management system is a way to manage the system so we don't have people managing housing space, but rather you have a dedicated space for volunteers, and they're continuously rotating through that space. The rating system is so in case you get a volunteer who didn't contribute well, you can give them a poor review and they can leave. The review of the community is the opposite. Did the volunteer have a good experience here? If not, volunteers aren't as likely to come back. Volunteers share private spaces, helping to Arcosanti reach a population cap or goal of 100. We also create an incentive for people who are here to share, reducing their required hours, increasing happiness and efficiency. So we did apply the VDM to this, and we realized that for discovery and relation, we can learn the principles of archaeology. We would want to increase the health of the food that's being provided for people here, because we want to have long-term sustainability. We want the work to be healthy because it's more profitable. Loving compassion. Volunteers are treated as equals, not servants. Efficiency, shared income, and task management. So this is an idea that Twin Oaks has done very well. And it's a way to manage the resource in a sustainable fashion. So instead of always hiring more people, the goal is to have the cost of being here zero. Not where you take home money, not where you go into debt, but to actually have it be zero. And there's very efficient ways to do that that are well understood. Abundance. We can automate important activities that are not happening here. Food production is very easy to automate. I've done it, it's been very easy to do since the 70s. We could provide a lot of food here if the incentive structure is in place. But when you have people leaving and going, we can't even manage a greenhouse because when Cheryl leaves, that greenhouse is going to die because nobody's replacing her. That is an essential area to automate. Collaboration. We need to have shared vision to share with people so that when people come here, they know what they're contributing towards. That's the importance of the task management system. Freedom. Moneyless with security. We create this long-term commitment to Arcosanti. I'm willing to commit for 10 years. For a few months every year, with the security that the agreement can be in place. That also gives Arcosanti security because they know when people are going to be coming back. Intrinsic motivation. It allows us to select the projects that are most interesting for helping Arcosanti advance. And this has been a complaint of some people who've gone through here, is that some people have lots of skills to offer, and then they're put into a kitchen. I understand the history behind that, but we're talking about 4 generations later, and people have different demands now. And we can accommodate these people. Regeneration, we can improve this environment. There are a lot of areas for improvement, and a lot of people are very interested in doing it if the time is available. Access. Instead of everybody here owning cars, maybe having a few shared cars. Okay, so this is an important chart. We're looking at the average hours per week, starting in 1830. Going through about 20 years. We see we start about 70 hours, continuously reducing in time. Now, we go to today, 2013. Where countries are at with their average time. At the top, we have Mexico. At the bottom, we have Germany. If we want to remain relevant, we need to reconsider how much time we are asking of our volunteers and our employees. This also helps the major issue that Arcosanti has, which is you guys need to actually, because of the insurance policies, it would be ideal if you could reduce the amount of full-time people to under 50. Well, if you go to a less than 32-hour-a-week work schedule, that automatically does it. You can go down to 0, actually, which creates a lot of other benefits. Now, next slide.
Except one of our values is to try to help people be healthy.
Yes. So, what I did is I ran some numbers through, and it would be helpful to have more accurate numbers, but I did some estimates. Right now we have 58 paid employees at Arcosanti. Assuming it's about minimum wage, that's nearly $1 million a year. Plus the call use fee, and then cost of feeding 100 people. This is the Arizona statistic, as well as what eating a bowl of food in the cafe would cost. They're actually coincidentally the same. This is not what I'm proposing, but this is interesting information. So this is how much work is being contributed every year for these people working full-time. 70 people. Suppose we have 70 people working full-time here. It works out to this. Now, if we were to add 30 more people, average that out over 100, that would actually give us a 28-hour per week schedule. So we can maintain things as they are, likely actually increase efficiency by bringing in more volunteers in a more desirable and comparable work environment where we all work 28 hours instead of 40. Next slide. So let's take a look at why we want to work less. Famous creative people. Green is how much time they do at a job. Most of these people have a lot of leisure time, but they use that for their creative work instead. They were not working a regular job. We need to learn, be creative, this kind of stuff. And when we have a little more free time, that's when all this happens. So if we want to have a lot of brilliant ideas blossom out of Arcosanti, we should be more conducive to that kind of environment. Next slide. So what we're proposing in part is the continuation and development of the system. Now the reason I said that nobody would have to change anything here is that this system could work as just a way for moving forward for volunteers who come here. So the volunteers aren't expected to work 45 hours a week to remain sustainable, but rather by sharing spaces and stuff like that, they can work a little bit less on projects that are actually going to benefit the arcology or Arcosanti, and then have a little bit of free time to be creative. So they can use this as a place to enjoy what happens when you first come here, is you do experience a creative boost. The different architecture really does well, the environment does well. And that, I think, would increase a lot of popularity, increase demand for people coming here, as well as definitely increase the amount of help Arcosanti is getting. And the reason I took the time to explain Laura's presentation is that there are other ways to manage a community than having to pay everybody. Twin Oaks, I would say, is more successful in a lot of ways than Arcosanti in that they have a waiting list of people. They have a surplus of money. And yet, the community doesn't use money at all. They're legally bound to take care of all the residents. They're legally bound to think about retirement policies, to take care of the health of everybody equal to their space, all these different needs. They aren't allowed to even pay their employees money. We have the option to create, for volunteers, a 501(d) status for just the people who opt into it, which can also lead to the creation of profitable organizations which are able to pay for themselves. So the requirement of a contractor to pay themselves is essentially what we're demonstrating and offering to do, is we'll provide a labor force for Arcosanti to help create the arcology that is sustainable, that doesn't require money or payment for these people that actually want to be here. And there is a very large population of people out there who would be very happy to live a moneyless lifestyle. So you don't have to convince anybody here to live this moneyless lifestyle. Rather, they are already out there and they would love to come here to contribute and not have to worry about money. We have a lot of different ways in which this could look, and we understand even that right now housing is an issue. There are vacant spaces. If we were to use a people counter in front of people's doors, you would find that there are spaces that are not entered here. That means that those spaces could be available for time for volunteers to use until the owner of that space wants to use it again, or rather the person who is registered to. And this keeps security so they can keep that space in their mind. So you're maintaining security to get access to the space whenever you need it, but you're allowing people who are staying up front, they are only going to be here temporarily. And the other option we have is we are actually willing to build and create these spaces for all the volunteers to be a part of our project. All the spaces would be entirely temporary so that we can move them away in the future. Our last presentation, I'll just go really fast to show this because it's kind of cool. We took the critical mass project. All the lookup points could be micro communities. This was just an idea to run through the VDM. But with the being temporary is that once the project is complete, we remove all those structures, leaving you with the lookout posts, the bridges, the path, and then we move those structures to the new city development that we intend on creating in the future. which is the low-density housing over here, with the more ecology-like structures here. And then we have our greenhouses, vertical gardens, agricultural belt, water purification. And then everything beyond that is all left to nature, being one node in the community network. So there's a demand for this, and this is the project that we would like to bring to Arcosanti if Arcosanti is interested. Any questions? All right, so we realize this is a lot, and we don't expect an answer anytime soon. But yeah, that's all I got. So
we're interested in discussing with anyone.
My question is related to the volunteer network, the volunteers that would come
Yes.
to be able to help and create here. What exposure would they have to Arcology, Palo Solari, Arcosanti? Because is there going to be like an onboarding process of like the workshop for them, or is that something where they're just coming in to be like this sort of separate force? I don't want to say
Definitely not
labor
supposed to be
force.
separate. Yeah, it would intend to be integrated, but done a little bit differently. In that you would want the purpose of having a network is that you get exposure to lots of different communities and a way to kind of discover for yourself what your best fit is, but also to improve ideas. So Arcology has some really great ideas in it, but there's also things that might not be so good. I don't know. But by getting exposed to other ideas, we can kind of, for ourselves, decide what's best. So the more we're exposed to, the better it is. Like, going to a modern society, you talk to people about life in a community, like, that's impossible. It's insane. But by exposing them to moneyless communities like Twin Oaks, to these different types of environments, we can then have these people leave the network or create another node of the network done how they want. So it's a way to really encourage an evolution of community in which we all learn from each other and we accept each other for how we are. That's why I said Arcosanti doesn't have to change at all. You don't have to change how you operate. But by being a node and accepting people who might have this different value, they come here and learn. And then you also, as Arconauts, have the option to participate in this network to visit the other communities that will later join. So you're also increasing your access to many other places. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all for your time.